Hello and welcome into Off the Bench here on a gloomy Tuesday. I'm Reed Mouse. We have a fun show for you guys today. Stone Shields is my producer. We're going to be talking, the 11th week of the NFL season has just wrapped up. There's some Bengals news, so it's going to be, per usual, a pretty NFL-centric show today. No guests, just me and Stone. We're going to be doing some buy or sells later. We're talking about the Jamar Chase suspension, the Cam Taylor-Britt injury update, all that and more. Sorry so much that we are late today. There was a disruption in a big internet provider, which is the cause for this. It was with Cloudflare. Is that what was going on?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of websites and things that we use to get this show up and running were affected by that outage. So it's made a little bit of a chaotic day for Stone preparing for this show. But Stone, are you ready to rock now?
Yeah, I think we're good. We're not currently on Twitter, so we're just live on YouTube right now. But,
so it's a YouTube exclusive.
Yes, YouTube exclusive. We'll see if we can get it on Twitter before the end of the show, but keep saying invalid broadcast, not to get everybody into the weeds there. But yeah, we're here, we're live, we're on YouTube, and we got a great show, and we're looking forward to it.
I'll give you credit, Stone.
Yeah.
You wear frustration better than I do, because I can tell quietly that you are frustrated and a little anxious and a little nervous about everything that's going on. But you don't, it's just because I've spent a lot of time around you.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of how you operate. But you are very good at hiding your frustration. Is that something that you were aware of before?
I was aware of that. I appreciate you pointing that out. But yeah, as the years have gone on, I've done a little bit better job of that, of just, staying poised, staying calm, collected. We're live on YouTube, not on Twitter, but that's all right.
That's good. Yeah, it's something I've come to find out that I am not good at. Apparently, I have a completely different demeanor when things aren't going well. And I feel like I don't get that frustrated, but apparently I get very frazzled, scatterbrained, even more so than I ever have. You haven't seen me in too precarious situation where I'm running around and too scatterbrained, but I do get there from time to time. But let's dive right in. Let's dive into today's show. It is a Tuesday. Bengals are gearing up for the New England Patriots this Sunday. Back home at Paycor, baby. And we find out that our best player on our team, our star wide receiver, as we suspected after the video evidence had come out that Jamar Chase had in fact spit on Jalen Ramsey. He's going to get a one-game suspension. He's going to get a small fine, and then, of course, he's not going to get his game check, which is going to cost him about $500,000. He is appealing that suspension, but I think we all know, not just here in Cincinnati, but throughout the National Football League as its fans, that Jamar Chase isn't going to play this Sunday, that the suspension is going to hold through, and that, it is what it is. And we talked a lot about it yesterday. We talked a lot about the validity of what he did, how it kind of seeps through the rest of the team. And I wanted to touch on that just a little more because, first off, I'll say this. Everyone that was getting on that Fox 19 reporter, the Fox Sports reporter, I have no qualms with the guy posting the video of what he captured. I know he's a hometown guy, but I think it was even Nick Kirby who put in our own Discord, and it's a very good point. He said, in this town, we always are asking we're asking reporters to have more of a spine, to have more backbone, to push, ask the hard-hitting questions, or just basically unfold what has happened in the sporting worlds here in town. But then we're gonna get on this local reporter, this local camera guy that works for Fox 19 that got this video. So before I dive into this,
yep.
did you have any opinion on the guy that released the video being a hometown guy? And
He's doing his job.
Right, exactly.
I don't understand why people are – I mean, you're kind of lame if you're out there going after this poor guy, right? He's doing his job. There's hundreds of cameras at these games. It's kind of funny that this is the only one seemingly to this point that I've seen that has captured the spit, but he's doing his job, right? I mean, that is literally his job to be a reporter, and he's there working at the game. So the people that are banging on him are – I'm sure
that guy's having a hard time too. I'm sure he's getting some nasty things said about him. So back off. I mean, yeah, he's just doing his job. He's doing his job, and you can't ask this town to be journalists and to unveil the truth, ask the questions, and then when he catches video of what actually happened, it's kind of part of his duty. It's part of his duty to get out there, and also part of his duty is to bring attention to the company he works for when you work in media. That's the job, and that's what he did. So I have no qualms with this. But I do have qualms with what Jamar Chase did, as I mentioned yesterday. And let me put it this way. I don't think any less of Jamar Chase. I think that what he did yesterday did on Sunday, you just don't do to another grown man. You just don't do that. You just do not do that, regardless of how heated a rivalry is, regardless of if you're trying to goad him into helping your team. All those things, fully understand, I guess, where he came from, but you just don't do that. And the point that I wanted to make today, and I started to illustrate it yesterday, and I want to go into it even further today, is that this is a symptom of where the team is at. This is a precipitation of where this team is headed and where it has been. Throughout the entire era of Zach Taylor, we thought the pride of this team was the culture that he has built. And we are now seeing it in real time deteriorate. We are seeing it not be what we once could hang our hat on, is that, hey, we play a stand-up game. We're in it together. There's not going to be any penalties. We're not going to have any personal fouls, any of that stuff. We're seeing that dissipate in real time. And the only thing I have to say about that is this is admittedly a stain on the several on where Zach Taylor is as a head coach, but it's also an opportunity. And the opportunity is thus. If he is able to get on the reins that seem to be slipping right through his hands and giving him rope burn, if he is able to hold on to the reins, tighten it up, and steer this ship back to a competitive football team, not the team that we've seen for the last 8 weeks, not the team that we've seen the last 2 weeks that have had their season high in penalties and had personal fouls, if it's not those teams and he can bring this team back to what we believe that they were before the season started, which is a playoff viable team, a team that is feisty, a team that can beat literally anyone in this league, then I will never disparage Zach Taylor for losing control of the team again, losing the culture of the team again. Because it's never spiraled like it is right now. And if he's able to pull that in, that is one hell of a job from the head coach. That is one truly tremendous job if he's able to, we're not choking players out mid-play. We're not having these personal penalties. We're not having the penalties. And this team, once again, looks like what we thought they'd look like before the season, which is a highly potent offense, disappointing defense, but able to beat any team in this league and no longer going to beat themselves with penalties and turnovers and everything that we've seen over this 8-week stretch. If he's able to do that, I will have re-earned. I've had it before for him. I've lost it over these past few weeks. I will have re-earned my respect for Zach Taylor in that regard. Do I still want him to be the head coach at the end of this year? I don't think so. And I don't. And in fact, I don't. I think it's not even a conversation worth having. Well, we will continue to have it because when I say it's not a conversation worth having, I don't think it's a conversation worth having in Paycor Stadium. I think it's a done deal. I think it should be. At least that's how I would operate this team. But I don't operate this team. I'm just a fan that puts on the jersey every Sunday and acts like a fool. And I'll continue to do that regardless of who the head coach is. But right now, I will continue to call for guys like Zach Taylor's jobs, but I will earn a new respect for him or re-earn that respect for him if he's able to pull in this team back to what they once were. And that is clean football. That is everyone saying the right things at the podium. That is no personal penalties. And that is basically the Cincinnati Bengals that we saw for the last 4 years that have had a winning record in each of the last 4 years. And a big part of that was not just because Joe Burrow is unbelievable, not just because Jamar Chase is unbelievable, not just because Trey Hendrickson had all-pro seasons as an edge rusher. It is because, in part, the way that they have conducted themselves. Something that, I've been somewhat proud of as a Bengals fan, admittedly. So, we'll see what happens because we're not going to see Jamar Chase this week. And the new news is that Cam Taylor-Britt is going to be out for the season. Cam Taylor-Britt was at one point behind Trey Hendrickson what we thought this defense was going to be centered around. we thought in a league that is growing fewer and fewer star cornerbacks that we were going to see, that we had one, that we point blank had one in Cam Taylor-Britt. And it was pretty clear over the past year and a half now that he hasn't been that. He's been a rotational piece at best. And now he's going to be out for the rest of the year. So there'll be more opportunities for younger guys or veterans to earn their keep on this roster. And with Cam Taylor-Britt out, with Jamar Chase out for a game, it's sometimes good to reflect on where your mental space was in August before this season started, where your mental space was even going into week 2 against that Jacksonville Jaguars game. And if I would have told you guys, Cincinnati Bengals fans, that heading into week 12 in a home game against the New England Patriots, take this all into consideration, the Bengals would be 3-7. They'd be without Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Mike Gesicki, their backup running back, Samaje Perine. They'd be without Trey Hendrickson, Shamar Stewart, Cam Taylor-Britt, and Logan Wilson heading into that game. Oh, and by the way, the team you're playing, the New England Patriots, are vying and are viable for the number 1 seed in the AFC. And Drake May, in year 2 of his tenure, is the betting favorite to be the most valuable player in the league. And the defense is on another historic trend to be not only the worst team and the worst squad in the league, but maybe the worst squad ever. Just it's fun, I guess is the right word. No, it's not. It is unique. It's a unique experience to think about what you would think if I told you guys that all the way back in August. And if I did, if I traveled back in time and I told you this team would be 3-7, Joe Burrow would be hurt again, Jamar Chase wouldn't play in that game, Cam Taylor-Britt, Logan Wilson will be traded, Trey Hendrickson has been a non-factor for most of the season, Shamar Stewart looks to be one of the worst draft picks this franchise, and it has a long history of bad draft picks, but Shamar Stewart's trending to be one of the worst draft picks ever. Oh, and Mike Gesicki, the guy that you signed to an extension, isn't going to be here either. If I would have told you all of that, your first question likely would have been, okay, what has the organization done? What are they doing at the top? Zach Taylor surely's gone, or Duke Tobin surely gone. Because that would be my first question. If things had been that bad and this team was trending in the way that they're going, being a top 10 pick in the league, and if things continue, maybe even a top 5 pick. I don't think they will in either one of those cases, but they are trending at this time to be that. There's a good chance that we go into the final 3-4 games of the year at 3-10. If we're trending in that direction, surely, either Al Golden, we fire Al Golden midway through the season, or we're getting rid of Zach Taylor, or we're getting rid of Duke Tobin, or at the very least, we would know that they are lame duck in their position, that they will not have that position coming into the next year. And it's not that case. We want that to happen as fans. Most do. Not all do. Most do. Want Zach Taylor to be gone. Want Duke Tobin to be gone. Want maybe even Al Golden or whoever to be significant changes. To have significant changes in this league on this organization's front. And we deep down know that more likely than not, none of that will happen. We'll run it all back with the same same group of vandals that have destroyed this organization over the last few years. We'll run it on back with them. And we'll cross our fingers that this is the year that we finally hit some draft picks and we get some good deals in the free agency, similar to what we did leading up to the 2021 run, where we hit on every single free agent on the defensive side of the ball, where we drafted well enough to supplement those pieces. It is just enamoring that we are sitting here at 3-10, and we know that more likely than not next year it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same. And I don't know what to think about that. Frustrates me. Doesn't make me feel good. But Stone, if I told you back in August that going into this November, what it will be, the 23rd? November 23rd game against the New England Patriots, Bengals would be 3-7. They'd be without, of their 22 perceived starters before the year, they'd be without 7 of them, including their starting quarterback, their best player on the team, Jamar Chase, their best defensive player, Trey Hendrickson, their captain linebacker, Logan Wilson, their first-round pick, their formerly thought to be a really good cornerback, Cam Taylor-Britt, and also the third target for Joe Burrow, Mike Gesicki. How would you have responded to that information?
Yeah, I would have been a little bit surprised. Obviously, in the NFL, injuries happen. Every team is dealing with it, some worse than others. I mean, you look at the Niners, all the injuries they've had, and it doesn't even just feel like this year for the Niners. It feels like this is like a 3-4 year thing for them. And, it's funny, or not really funny, but I guess frustrating, is that for a while there, it was like, yeah, we lost Joe Burrow, but the rest of the team is relatively healthy. And then you kind of blink and all the names you just mentioned, it's like, well, the Bengals aren't really healthy right now either. And obviously Joe Burrow is a big part of that. But I think the 3-7 thing is obviously the number one thing that would shock me. Injuries, of course, happen in the NFL. But, obviously I'm a fan. I'm biased. But when I sit there before the year and I try to figure out exactly how I think this team's going to perform, I try to take that unbiased hat off to the best of my ability. I think I did, and no way did I expect them to be 3-7 and the defense be significantly worse than last year, which is pretty hard to believe.
You're a positive guy. My off the mark. I said this yesterday. I said it Sunday post game, and I'll say it right here. Am I off the mark when I say if you would have told Bengals fans even after Joe Burrow's injury when they started 2-0, if you told the most cynical, most pessimistic Bengals fan that 8 weeks later, 9 weeks later because of the bye, 8 games later, the Bengals would be 3-7. Do you think even the most pessimistic fan would have believed you?
Yeah, I think in this league, when you lose your quarterback, you can't bank on anything, right? If the Bills lost Josh Allen, they could be in a very similar spot, and obviously their defense isn't nearly as bad as Cincinnati's defense. But I think in this league, when you lose your franchise guy, right, it's not like you lost a guy on a rookie deal. It's not like you lost a rookie quarterback. You lost a guy that's making $275 million and is perceived as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. It's just when that happens, you can't really bank on anything. So I definitely thought they would find a way to scrap out a few more wins, especially here with Joe Flacco, the Bear game, the Jet game. That hasn't happened. But when you lose your quarterback in this league, it's just – you can't really bank on having success.
Yeah. That's more fair. I just truly believe that, there's some obviously pessimistic people that watch this show. I tend to think that I'm an optimistic fan, and I think even them would have been like, no, there's no way they're gonna win more than one game. They're gonna win more than one game over the next 2 months. That's not what's gonna happen. Even though you play some tough teams, play the entire NFC North. You play the Steelers twice. You play some tough teams, but I think everyone would have said you had more than one win. And in point blank, if they had more than one win, they'd still be kind of in this thing. It wouldn't be good. It wouldn't look good, but they'd still be somewhat in this thing at 4-6 with Joe Burrow coming back. Whether it be a win against the Jets, win against the Bears, beat the Steelers, beat whoever it is, they'd still be in this thing. Though it would be bleak, it wouldn't be completely dead like it feels right now. I asked you before the show started, Stone. Some people, and we'll get to buy or sells here in a few moments, but some people took Discord or didn't like what Zach Taylor said about Jamar Chase yesterday.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway from Zach Taylor's quote on Jamar Chase?
I was fine with it. Look, Zach understands where his bread is buttered, and that is with Jamar Chase, and that is with Joe Burrow. And if I'm Zach Taylor and things are falling apart at the seams, the last thing I'm going to do is get in some kind of beef with Jamar Chase or be like, oh, that's totally inexcusable. We can't have that here in Cincinnati. That'll never happen again. Shame on Jamar Chase. He's backed Jamar Chase forever. He's always gone to bat for him. And, hopefully Jamar is a really good leader and the things he's saying are true. But, when you're that good of a player, the last thing you want to do as Zach Taylor, especially when you're losing games, is to create any friction between you and the player. So, I don't have an issue with what Zach Taylor said. I agree. It's one mistake. It's kind of a gross mistake and a nasty mistake. At the end of the day, it is a mistake. And, I don't think he has some long track record of being a horrible person. Has he gotten a few scuffles? Does he run a bit hot? I think that's fair to say with Jamar, but he's never done anything bad. He certainly has never done anything bad off the field that was like, a public thing. So I got no issues with what Zach said about that. Maybe some people were like, oh, he should have went after him, but you just don't do that when you have a one-time thing like this with Jamar, and it's one of your best players, and just the reality of the situation. You only have 3 wins on the year. If your record is flipped, you're 7-3. Maybe you sit there and take a different stance there. But the last thing you can afford to do if you're Zach Taylor and the Bengals is get on the bad side of the best receiver in the National Football League. So I think he handled it fine. The people that are ticked off about it are probably the same type of people that thought he killed Jalen Ramsey's dog, which obviously he didn't. What he did was nasty and gross and can't happen again, but, let's not act like he killed somebody here.
Yeah, fair. That's fair. And I've made my point very well known that I find it not just bad. I like slightly am embarrassed as a fan that kind of thing happens on the team that I root for. I truly do. That's how I reacted to it. And maybe it's on top of the fact that we lost the game, so it's just a piling of emotion when I say that. But yeah, the people that were frustrated at what Zach Taylor said yesterday, and you've just been completely blind to how Zach Taylor answers any of these interviews. There's never been a time where Zach Taylor has outwardly gone against a player besides maybe Chase Brown, which he didn't even – he said something kind of jarring, kind of dug into Chase Brown, and then immediately gave him 12 straight compliments. That's how Zach Taylor operates. And, that's part of the reason that he's earned this reputation as a player's coach, as this great culture builder, because people tend to trust him and believe in him. But we'll see. We will see. Because it feels like the one thing that he had tight reins on the culture of this program, and now for a few weeks in a row, they are slipping through his hands, and we'll see if he can turn this thing around. Now, a good portion of that is because in years past, he had been winning. 4 straight winning records. Obviously, doing what they did in those 2 years, which I already saw someone in the chat saying, I'm tired of talking about it. Unfortunately, that's what we're going to continue to talk about till it's so distant in the memory, or till this era of Bengals is done. And you can say that era is done, but I'm talking about the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase era, or Zach Taylor era. Like, those are the 3 pieces that kind of have been the forefront of this era. So until that era is done, we're going to keep looking at that, because we believe that that's where we can be. That's where we believe we can get back to. But until one of those things change, yeah, we're going to keep begrudgingly talking about those things. But yeah, I mean, if you took any reserves for what Zach Taylor said yesterday, then I don't know what to tell you. You just haven't been paying attention enough, because that's how he responds. That's how he responds to these opportunities. And like I said, Jamar Chase, he'll be back in 2 weeks. He's not going to win his appeal. He just point blank isn't going to win that appeal. There's video evidence of him doing it. He's going to be back in 2 weeks, and he'll still be a big portion of the game. The last time that we had serious, I guess, character questions about Jamar, not that I don't think this is a character question. I think it was just a one-off incident, but was 2020, was it last year, start of last year? They played the Chiefs, and he had the big turnover, and everyone's like, what's going on with Jamar Chase? And I think I even was like, man, this is not like Jamar Chase, and what did he do for the next 4 weeks? Looked like the best wide receiver the world's ever seen. So we'll see if he comes back with a little bit of extra motivation when we play the Baltimore Ravens on Thanksgiving, when we go back and we play the Bills, or back to the Ravens, which will be the next 3 games that he'll be able to play in after sitting idly by. But things aren't looking well. I haven't even seen if the line has changed on the game. I know it was 7 points at home before Jamar Chase was announced to be suspended. Maybe they already baked that in, as I'm trying to do this live and trying to see the spread live. It's been 8.5, so they deem Jamar Chase worth about 1.5 points, which is fair. Quarterbacks typically worth about 3 to 6, and yeah, a star wide receiver is worth about 1.5 points, even the best wide receiver in the league. So, man, good luck to the Bengals this week, I guess. Let's do buy or sell here in the second hour, or second half, back half of the hour here on Off the Bench. Let's do some buy or sell. Stone. Yeah. Start us off. We've got Bengals, and then we go into NFL after that, which will take up the final 30 minutes.
All right, here we go. Buy or sell. Joe Burrow will return to MVP caliber form this season.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Every time that he's come immediately back from an injury, it's taken a little time. And that is also typically on pace with, we've never seen him come back mid-season, correct? Yeah. Every injury that he's had until this point has done him in for the season, or he's before the season started. And we don't know if it's a slow start for him to come back from injury or if that's just on par with how this team typically starts, which is slow. Obviously, 2023, when he had the calf injury, he did not look like a good quarterback for those first 4 games. In fact, I think PFF had him graded as one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. I still believe that with this offense, the way that this offensive line, and I think that's one of the questions going forward, but with the way this offensive line's playing under Joe Flacco, if Jamar Chase, T. Higgins are there, there's nothing that has shown me in Joe Burrow's career that makes me think that he's anything other than an MVP talent. And until I see that, I'll continue to believe that every time he takes the field, takes snaps for the Cincinnati Bengals, that he will be an MVP caliber talent. So, I'll buy that he will return to MVP caliber. Obviously, he's not going to win the award. He's only going to play a few games. But MVP caliber player, into where he's one of the elite quarterbacks of the game. What say you, Stone Shields?
Yeah, it's clearly a buy to me. I mean, all he's done throughout his career when he plays in December and January is play like an MVP. I got no reason to believe that it's going to be any different this year. We've seen him do it with bad offensive lines. As you mentioned, we'll talk about that in a second. I don't think this offensive line is good, but I think it has shown a little bit of improvement, certainly from start to finish. And I'd say it probably has, gone a little bit better than the expectations going into the year. But this isn't something where it's a significant wrist injury that could, prohibit his ability to throw the football. It's not a knee injury. It's a toe. He seems to be moving around just fine. Maybe the mobility isn't clearly or fully back, but Joe Burrow has proven that he can be elite from within the pocket. Maybe that's how he'll operate here when he comes back. But, no reason to believe that he can't be at an MVP caliber form when he does return. Jamar is going to be back after the suspension. You hope T stays healthy, but as long as those 3 are out there, you expect a lot of points offensively.
How do you think that appeal is going to go with Jamar?
Probably not well. I mean, that's about as clear as day as it gets. It is funny. There are some people out there in this day and age of AI trying to say it's artificial intelligence, or maybe it's just a bad angle and it kind of went by Jalen Ramsey. But I think to you and I, it seems pretty clear that he'd spit on him. It went.
The people that said that it went by him are a special kind of delusional. They're like, we didn't even spit on him. He was just spitting. He was just okay, whatever. Like, what's it matter if he hit his shoulder, hit his face mask, or hit by the side? If he spit towards his way, he was clearly doing something demeaning. But regardless.
When Jalen Carter spit on Dak, was that in his face? Do you remember?
It was before the game.
Right, they were literally going out for the first play, I think.
It was before the game, and I do not remember. I didn't even see it live. I just heard. I hadn't turned on the game yet for that game. I do not remember.
Yeah. Because, he spit on him. But it didn't – where did it go? Like on his shoulder? Yeah. So maybe it's not.
It's not a headshot. It's not a headshot. You get the extra points. It's a 2-game suspension if he spit on his face. If you spit on his jersey, it's just a 1-game suspension. Yeah. Guess there's there's tears to this.
Yeah, exactly. All right, buy or sell. The Bengals' revamped offensive line is finally good enough to protect Burrow consistently. Buy or sell?
So I'm going to sell this. I do think that the line is probably the best it's been. Am I off by saying that? I think it's probably the best it's been in the Joe Burrow era. Not that that's a tall task. Not that that's a tall bar to jump over. But I do think it's the best it's been. The reason I'm selling this is because the question is to finally protect Burrow consistently. And I think that, unfortunately, I've got no reason to believe this other than what I've seen. I think Joe Burrow is that's just who he is as a player, that he gets banged up quite a bit. There's some players that play their entire career. Eli Manning, I don't think ever hit the IL. Cal Ripken Jr. never got hurt. There's some players that get hurt a lot. There's some players that don't. I don't know if it's genetic makeup. I don't know what it is, but that's just the case that we're in. And unfortunately, our elite MVP caliber quarterback is one of the players that gets hurt more often than not. And he's admittedly been hit a lot. He's been hit pretty much more than any quarterback in the league since he's joined the league, and the games that he's played, because he's obviously missed a ton of games. But I don't believe that this offensive line is able to protect Joe Burrow consistently, even though I do believe it's the best offensive line he is, because the only offensive line that I think can protect Joe Burrow consistently and not have him ever be injured would involve an Anthony Munoz, an Orlando Pace, Jason Kelce, whoever the greatest offensive lineman, you name them. That's what it would take, because I think, unfortunately, Joe Burrow is just injury prone. He just is injury prone. Doesn't detract from him when he's on the field at all, but when you scale him as a quarterback, he is injury prone, because that's what he's shown us to be. Stowe?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to sell this. We're going to talk about this with Paul. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, what the plan is for the offensive line, because I think you got to give Scott Peters some kudos, the new offensive line coach here, year one. They're playing with 2 rookies, and it's not like it's a first-round pick out there either. You know, it's Fairchild, a third-round guy, Jalen Rivers, a fifth-round guy. I think it has gotten a little bit better as the season has gone on. I do think it's fair to say they took a step in the wrong direction in the game against Pittsburgh. I think you started out that game, and you're like, oh, wow, you know, you're running the football a little bit. You're picking up third downs. Pockets kind of holding in there for Joe Flacco. You go down and score a touchdown immediately. And I feel like progressively as the day went on, it got just a little bit worse. And it wasn't like, oh, you know, the pocket's collapsing and Flacco's getting blown up, which is kind of what we saw the first couple of weeks, where it's like these guys aren't doing anything. They're hardly even standing there. They're just kind of olaying these defenders to the quarterback. But there's a couple times on the interception, if it just holds up a little bit longer, maybe you're able to complete that. Obviously, when you look at it in the game, it just looks like a horrible decision. But I do think the hit there on the pick impacted Joe Flacco a little bit, and there were a couple plays down the field where Noah Fant was open and he just wasn't quite able to get to him because he just barely ran out of time. So, you know, I feel a little bit more comfortable with Burrow coming back with how they're playing right now, but I still think you need to evaluate that group this offseason. We all, you know, have been very frustrated with Orlando Brown. The rookies are coming along a little bit, but I wouldn't say I've got a ton of confidence to fully buy that. And, you know, look, you're playing quarterback in the NFL. It's not going to be perfect where you're Tom Brady in New England. You literally don't get touched. That's not going to happen, right? You're going to get hit. It's just a matter of, you know, hopefully not getting as hit as often as he was in the past.
All right, next one.
All right, buy or sell. Trey Hendrickson has played his last game. This one's interesting.
Played his last game this season.
Yeah.
I should caveat, and there's a caveat on the next one because I found a typo on my next one. This is interesting because there's not been any major reporting that says that he is out for the year or he's going to require some serious help or anything like that. Like it pretty much is week to week. I only bring this up because I fear that he's not going to be ready this week. He's not going to be ready for Thanksgiving. And if this team, similar to the same conversation we've had about Joe Burrow, if we should bring him back, I think Trey Hendrickson will look around and be like, should I come back? Knowing that I'm an over-the-hump edge rusher, should I come back and play for this team? I have a body of work that somewhat speaks for itself, and I know I'm going to be deterred and some money because they're going to say, well, you're an over-the-hump player and you just missed 13 games in a season. If you don't play for the rest of this year, how can we give you big-time money? But I wonder if Trey Hendrickson is if he's never going to be at 100%, if he's not going to be at 100% for the rest of this year, and this team has nothing to play for, which it is appearing that is the case. It actually is probably the case. Then does Trey Hendrickson decide for himself, I'm not going to play if I'm not 100%. I'm at 80%, and it's just not worth for me going out there knowing that I still have some contract to play for. I will sell this, having said all of that, because it's a odds game. I think if you ask me what are the odds that he comes back and plays a game for the rest of this year, I'd say it'd be about 80%. Any game for the rest of this year, I'd say it's up over 80%. But we will see. We will see. I will buy that he will play again, or I guess I will sell that he has played his last game this year, just because I think at some point he will come back. But I just want to get in your guys' brain, what happens if he's never going to be at 100% and the Bengals are 3-10? Is Trey Hendrickson going to go out there and be like, you know what, I'm going to play. I'm going to go play for these last 4 games? So?
Yeah, this one's tough. I'm gonna learn a lot about Trey Hendrickson if he decides to come back. I'm gonna gain a lot of respect for him if he does indeed decide to come back. But I kind of feel like he's done in Cincinnati this year, right? I mean, he's proven. Say what you want, but Trey Hendrickson has proven he's a selfish player. That has gone on for several years now. Throughout the off seasons, how he handles himself, what he says through the media, he has proven that he's a selfish player. But the caveat to that was, well, when it was time to play football, he was always out there going to battle with his boys, and he had done that, right? But now he's sitting here, he's looking up at the record, going up there cooked this year. He's already frustrated with the organization because, yeah, they gave him a big-time raise this year, but they didn't give him any long-term security. And if you're him, and the body of work that you've put out there, he has a couple of sacks this year. Obviously hasn't played a ton, but somebody will pay him based off his performance this year and certainly his performance the past couple of years. And the business decision would be obviously not to come back. And, I kind of feel like Trey Hendrickson would do that. It's different, with Joe Burrow. Burrow obviously is the quarterback. He's the face of the franchise. He's the face of the city. There's more motivation for him to come back. But if you're Trey Hendrickson here, you don't have a contract for next year, and you've been banged up, you're aging, you're frustrated with the organization, your team's out of it. I don't know. I think he's probably played his last down with the Bengals.
Oh, man. I did not expect you to buy that. You know what's interesting about that is you said, and I agree with you, he has shown nothing other than being a selfish player. And I agree with you there. You might not agree with this, though. I don't think any worse of you for being a selfish. This is your career of choice. This is what you had God-given talent, and this is what you've worked hard for your life to do, and you've earned the right as a player to take care of your family, to as your career choice, to do what's best for you, and if what's best for you is earning as much money as possible, doing what's best for you is what's best for you. No hard issue. I do also reserve the right, as a fan of the team, to criticize you when you do take those selfish stances. Like, you have the right to do it. I have the right to as a fan, criticize you for doing so. I don't think any worse of you. It is what it is. Like, you're a selfish player, and there's some in this game, even saying what I just said about how you have the right to take care of your life, take care of your family, take care of all this stuff. There are players out there that choose not to do that and still have the spirit of, this is a team effort. I'm gonna do everything. I'm gonna, take a little less in money or put my body at will because all these guys, we're all going to war together every single Sunday against the biggest, strongest, and most athletic human beings in this country. So I don't think any less of Trey Hendrickson, but he has proven to be a selfish player. So we'll see. That's why I threw it out there. That's why I asked this question of if he's not at 100%, which I don't think he's ever going to be at 100% for the rest of this year. If he's not at 100% and this season's done, is he going to go out there and play? Is he going to go out there and play for the 3-10 Bengals? I don't know. Also worth mentioning that as an over the 30 edge rusher, by him only playing 4 games this year, I think he's played 4 games this year. Mm-hmm. By him only playing 4 games this year, he has drastically hurt his marketability. Yeah. Like, if he was 28, no one would care. It'd be like, all right, we've seen this guy be an all-pro. We've seen this guy lead the league in sacks. He's 28 years old, but now he's going to be, 32? People will care that he only played 4 games this previous year. All right, next one is for the next buy or sell. I had the typo. Not for this year, next year.
Okay. And for the record, Trey Hendrickson, still the best free agent signing in the history of the franchise, and it's a darn shame that they weren't able to, win a world championship with him because I think, what he does on the field, I think he's a world championship caliber pass rusher, no doubt. Next one here, buy or sell. We will see Chase, Higgins, Hendrickson, and Burrow all in stripes next year.
So this is kind of in vein of the last question.
Yeah.
Right? The most likely of those players to not come back is Trey. The most likely to come back is Joe and Jamar. And then we'll put T at a slightly less capacity to come back than those two. There would have to be, for Jamar, T, or Joe to leave, all those guys are dang near 100% to come back and play for the Bengals next year. For any of those guys to leave this year, it would require this season to go off the rails more than it already has, and for this team to finish 4-13, 3-14. Zach Taylor's gone. Joe Burrow's disgruntled. He wants a trade. Jamar Chase, and then we just strip it all down. To where if we're not seeing one of those guys, one of those 3, we're probably not seeing most of them. Like if there's a world in which we trade T. Higgins, we're probably trading at least Joe or Jamar. Like, it's like those 3 are in it or they're not in it. Now, the big one is Trey Hendrickson. And I am actually under the belief that coming into next year, the most likely team that Trey Hendrickson is playing for is in Cincinnati. I think that this team is working under the premonition that are not good because it's abundantly clear that they cannot draft defensive players. And their edge rushers that they asked to step up and fill the role of Trey Hendrickson, Myles Murphy, who played okay on Sunday but still hasn't been good, and Jamar Stewart, who when he is here, which he hasn't been here a whole lot, has been absolutely abysmal. When those two players have shown no capacity to be star-level players, then you are kind of handcuffed into go, okay, well, Trey Hendrickson is a star-level player. We've got to pay this guy. So I think that the Bengals will be handcuffed into making another deal with Trey. I think the franchise tag's $35 million, which I will admit that I think if we offer him the franchise tag this year, he will take it. He doesn't have an option to take it. He won't. $35 million for 1 year of work for Trey Hendrickson. I think he will be over the moon excited for that. But I have been wrong before. We'll see. I think the most likely scenario is that Trey Hendrickson is a Cincinnati Bengal next year. And even if it's only like a 30 or 40% chance that he's a Cincinnati Bengal next year, it's still more likely than any other team in the league. So I'll buy. I think we'll all see them in stripes next year.
I will sell. Chase and Higgins, they'll be back. There's, people think it's fun to talk about trading them or whatever. They just signed their big-time extensions. The whole plan was that, we're going to go with Burrow, we're going to go with Chase, we're going to go with Higgins, and that's going to be the identity of our football team, and that's going to be our path to a world title. Game and a half in, you lose your quarterback, and you got real no choice but to try it again next year and hope those guys can stay healthy. But I think the Bengals are done with Trey Hendrickson. I think the whole point of, giving him his raise was like, you know what, we're going to make you happy this year. We need you this year. Because mind you, the expectation, it's crazy to say now when you see how bad this defense is and how bad their record is right now. The expectation and the goal was to win the Super Bowl this year. This wasn't like, we'll bring Trey Hendrickson here for this year and maybe we'll sneak into the playoffs. No, that was – we're going to keep these guys together for one more year, and it is going to be our push to win a Super Bowl. Obviously, that hasn't happened. They have fallen dreadfully short of that. And I think the organization will realize, okay, even if we bring him back, we are still a ways away on the defensive side, and we need to figure out what to do with that money other than give it to an aging guy that hasn't been out there and available and that is a selfish player. They got to mix it up. And I would be shocked if Trey Hendrickson was back next year. I think they went all in on, let's try it one more year and see how it goes, and it just completely blew up in their face. Maybe if you're in a situation where the defense was like, okay, they're serviceable, and you back your way into the playoffs, maybe you consider it. But even bringing Trey Hendrickson back, what's that going to do for this unit?
Well, I asked the question I think that was the plan. That was clearly the plan for this year. Yeah. Was Trey Hendrickson going to play one more year? Someone between Jamar Stewart or Myles Murphy will step up as a legitimate number one pass rusher. And point blank, neither one has. They haven't. Not even close, to be honest with you. Rotational pieces at best. And I think the Bengals are going to go in this offseason and they'll look at their options here. There's about 4. Option 1 is, all right, we're going to ride with Jamar Stewart and Myles Murphy. Shake Trey's hand and say, good luck elsewhere. Option number 2, realizing that Jamar and Myles Murphy aren't it. Okay, well, then we got to sign Trey Hendrickson again because we know that he is it. Option 3 would be to bring in another free agent defensive end because I think we all know that Jamar Stewart and Myles Murphy aren't it. So now we're looking, all right, how do we fill the gap? Is it sign Trey Hendrickson? Is it sign another free agent? Or do we go for it again in the draft? We've used 2 of our last 3 first-round picks on edge rushers, and they both failed miserably. Now we're going to have a better pick this year, more likely. We're not going to have the 18th pick in the draft, or the 27th pick in the draft. It's going to be a high draft pick. But I think the Bengals are going to weigh their options, and they're going to realize that the best option is to pay Trey Hendrickson $30+ million for a year or 2. So we'll see.
All right. Buy or sell. The Bengals defense will be viable in 2026.
I don't think that you can buy this, and I don't think you can gauge what we've seen, both in how they've played, both in the development and how we've drafted, and buy that they will be viable, and you're being honest to yourself. Like, if you are being honest to yourself, if you're being honest to you and your friends and your family and fellow fans about this team being viable next year, you cannot be honest and say, yes, they will be viable next year, because there's not one shred of evidence that lends itself to the case. This team, everything we've seen, is that they will not be. The only hope is quite literally that hope. It's just, they can't be bad for forever. Things got to turn around eventually. They got to hit on a draft pick eventually. There's not one shred of evidence that will show you that this team has been viable. So, yeah, I'm selling that this defense will be viable.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. Yeah, we'll cross our fingers. Yeah, we'll hope, but you can't sit here and say that you feel confident enough to buy this, that they're going to be better. There's going to be, they had to make wholesale changes, right? But you can't cut everybody. Like, some of these guys are still going to be playing, and somebody needs to step up drastically, and you have to hit on draft picks, and you have to hit on free agent signings. All of those things, the organization has proven that they can't execute in recent memory. So, yeah, unfortunately, there's no way you can sit here and buy this.
Hey, before we move on to the final 5 minutes of the show, I just looked up ES because I was curious, because I was when I brought up the Trey Hendrickson thing, and you're of the opinion that he's not going to come back, and I'm of the opinion that he will, because I think the Bengals will weigh their options and go, all right, well, we need an edge rusher. We need a star edge rusher. How are we going to get it? Is it going to be in the draft? Is it going to be another free agent? Guess who the number one, according to an ESPN article that came out 6 days ago, guess who the number one, not just edge rusher, but free agent into this coming offseason is?
Trey Hendrickson.
Trey Hendrickson is correct.
Yeah.
So I think, when you sign the number one free agent, I think we're a little jaded when it comes to the Trey Hendrickson. I certainly am, about the way that it's kind of unfolded the last few years, about him signing the extension, then immediately complaining about it and wanting more money, and everything that has unfolded before our eyes over the last few years. We're a little jaded of that. And we're a little jaded by the fact that he's been a part of this defense for the last few seasons, and it hasn't been good. So we're just like, can we try something else? Because at some point, you're tired of trying the same thing. The old cliche, it's not the actual definition, but the old cliche of the definition of insanity is trying the old thing over and over again. That's where we're at if we continue to roll with Trey. But the best option, to be quite honest with you, is to sign Trey Hendrickson next season. Now, you got to weigh the options of how much money you're going to be spending and whatnot. But I digress. I just think they're over it. They're over his antics, and they're just ready to move on here at this point and not pay a guy that's that old that much money. But we'll see. The next highest edge rusher, if you're wondering, is Jalen Phillips.
Okay. Yeah, and it looks like Howie's probably going to want to hold on to him.
Yeah, more than likely. More than likely.
Buy or sell, transitioning a little bit away from the Bengals, but staying here in the AFC North. The Ravens are head and shoulders the best team in the AFC North. Buy or sell?
I think I'm buying this, and I don't think they're that amazing. I don't think they. I think, if you recall, after Week 1, the way that they played against the Buffalo Bills, even though they lost, I said they were still the number one team in the NFL. And you can laugh at that now, but I think every single power rankings, they mix around who the number one team in the league is every single week. So beside the point. I think, obviously, the Browns are terrible. Obviously, the Bengals aren't very good. And obviously, the Steelers are much of the same of what we've seen for the past few years. And it is a good team that is 9-8, 10-7, and will get promptly trounced in the first round of the playoffs. So, having that all said, I think the Baltimore Ravens are not where they've been the past few years. They're still the best team in the league. I'm buying.
Best team in the league?
Best team in the AFC North, my bad. Best team in the division.
So basically this question is, are the Ravens head and shoulders above the Steelers? Because we know the Bengals and the Browns aren't in that conversation. I'm going to sell it. Look, the Ravens, obviously, they have the best quarterback in the division when Joe Burrow's out. In Lamar Jackson, but the interior of their offensive line, that is a real problem. They don't block anybody there with their guard spots, and when you're a quarterback having to deal with that pressure from the interior, that can be very, very challenging to deal with. The Browns, they stink. That's a really good defense, but Lamar was really bad. Had 2 interceptions, really couldn't do much throwing the football in that game against Cleveland. So I'm going to sell this. The Steelers aren't that great, but the Ravens aren't that great either. Maybe the Ravens are a tick better than the Steelers, but I'm not going to sit here and say head and shoulders above. I think the Duggar trade for Pittsburgh Pittsburgh has really worked for them. Their defense has gotten a lot better. They still have some stars on that defense. You got questions about what they can do offensively. They've obviously struggled in that department. And, if Aaron Rodgers is going to miss some time, that obviously will be very impactful. But I'm not in on the Ravens. Yeah, I really like their quarterback. How can you not? But they got some issues there along their offensive line, and we all know what their defense did earlier in the year. Obviously, it has gotten better, but I'm not ready to say head and shoulders above the Steelers at this point.
Okay. What time's your interview with Paul Dehner?
We can keep going. We
can go for five or 10 more minutes or so like that. Yeah. Before we continue on,
sure.
I keep reading this article now about top free agents. Another one that is going to be a free agent this year, Khalil Mack. Would that interest you at all?
That's a lot of age right there, but yeah, I don't know. Like, there's so many decisions this team has to make, and it doesn't seem like there's a clear plan on what they should do. I think even as a fan base, we're all divided. Because, at some point, you got to lean on your young guys a little bit, but unfortunately, they all stink. And can you build a whole defense in free agency? No. So they're going to have to toe that line, and it'll be fascinating to see how they make those decisions.
Can't do it again. They've done it once. It seems unlikely to do it twice in a 6-year stretch where you make an entire defense in free agency, as they did back in 2020, signing guys like Awuzie and Von Bell and Trey Hendrickson. And, again, they did have Jesse Bates and Sam Hubbard and Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt, which were homegrown guys. But a big piece of that was just free agency. And, I don't know. Sometimes questions are easy to answer. Sometimes they're easy to answer. And more often than not, when you're arguing about something, it's because the question's not easy to answer. And how the Bengals solve the solution of their defense is not easy to answer. They've tried the easiest route, which is just use draft capital. Hopefully you get some good players. And that's been a massive, massive failure. A few more buy or sells.
This is a good one. Buy or sell. There will be one head coaching vacancy in the AFC North this year.
All 4 coaches have fielded their own firing controversies this year in their own right. Mike Tomlin kind of has some heat on him just because Steelers fans are tired because they haven't won a game in the postseason since they beat us. Now they think they've won one other game since they beat us back in 2015. Then you've got John Harbaugh. They start 1-5, and they're kind of fed up because of the way that the Ravens look like absolute world beaters in the regular season. And they play the Bills or they play the Chiefs, and things kind of fall apart. And then obviously all the big lead losses that the Ravens have suffered, and people attribute that to John Harbaugh. Kevin Stefanski, 2-time head coach of the year, is on the chopping block, quite simply because the Browns are going to brown, and they always will, and they'll just always be a terrible, terrible franchise. And then you got the Cincinnati Bengals, who kind of we put the parameter up there before the season, which was if they do not make the postseason, Zach Taylor deserves to lose his job. He got another caveat. He got another outlier by losing Joe Burrow again. And now they're like, well, I don't know. But things have been worse than I think we could have even imagined here in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow gone. Or worse than we've ever seen, because mark it back to 2023 when that team still won some games and finished 9-3. It's an odds game, right? It seems if all 4 guys have had some discord this season, it seems likely that at least one of them will be gone. But the funny thing is, if you take it point by point, if you go, is it more likely than not that the Browns fire Kevin Stefanski? I would say it's not more likely. I say that it's more likely that he comes back for another year. Is it more likely than not that Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh get fired? Obviously, it's way more likely that they come back next year. And then here in Cincinnati, is it more likely that Zach Taylor comes back next year? And I would, at this point in time, say, yeah, I'd say it's more likely because that's what we've seen the Bengals do. They hold on to coaches for 16 years. It would have to get really bad. So in every case, it is more likely they come back, but over the course of all 4 of them, I think that one of them will fall. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
I totally hear you. This is a great buy or sell. I'm going to take the different route here, and I'm going to say they're all going to be back, but it is interesting because you could argue they're all in the hot seat, right? I mean, Tomlin and Harbaugh are kind of at the top of the league, but there's organizations and fan bases are getting a little frustrated with, the lack of postseason success, I guess, here at this point. But I think Zach will be back unless this thing completely blows up, which very much still a possibility with lots of games left on the schedule. But at this point, I would say I think he's back. Tomlin, I don't think Pittsburgh would ever fire Mike Tomlin, but I do think there is a chance that Tomlin might sit down after the season and be like, you know what, I'm in a spot here where it was a great run. We won a title. We won a ton of games. I'm ready to move on and be kind of a mutual decision. I don't think they would fire him, but maybe he's looking over at New York, and he would be the top guy in New York. If he's like, maybe I go over there with a young quarterback and try things out in the NFC. I could see that potentially happening. Stefanski, the thing about Cleveland is when you look at the worst teams in the National Football League, you see, teams like the Titans, right, and the Jets. I don't put the Browns really in there because that defense is good and they got some pieces. They just don't have a quarterback. And as you mentioned, of course, Stefanski, 2-time Coach of the Year. I think they'll probably hold on to him for at least a little bit longer and give him an opportunity to get a better quarterback. Dylan Gabriel's been okay, but he's not the answer there long-term at quarterback. So I don't know. I just think that's a great question. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them lost their job, but if I was, betting on this, I would say that they're all probably going to be back.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. All right, final. We'll do one more and have it be the final buy or sell that I sent you, number 8.
About the Jags?
No. The best team in the NFL. Did you get that one? Did I not? So now I'll cue it up for you.
Yeah, here we go.
I'll cue it up. We'll do a little reversal. We'll reverse the offense here in the final buy or sell. Buy or sell. We still don't know who the best team in the NFL is. And I mentioned that because you do power rankings every week. You see the power rankings around the league, and it feels like every time that we all right, this team's the best team in the league. It's the Bills. All right, it's the Chiefs. All right, it's the Rams. All right, it's the Bucks. All right, it's whoever. That team inevitably goes on a 2-game streak of they don't look very good or they lose some games. I think we felt pretty confident a few weeks ago, probably the most confident that we've been all year, when the Chiefs dominated a few games in a row. You're like, all right, this Chiefs team, they're back to being the dominant team again. And what do? They lose to the Broncos. And I think they're still on the outside looking in of the postseason. So, yeah, It's really unique because since we've been doing content here at Chatterbox Sports, you felt pretty confident in the top 3 teams. And every year you'd be like, all right, well, this year it's the Chiefs, the Bills, and the 49ers. Or this year it's the Chiefs, the Eagles, and the Bills. Or this team it's the Ravens, the Bills, and the Chiefs. Whatever it is, you feel pretty confident in your top 3. It's typically in picks 3 through 10 where, a power rankings per se can interchange quite frequently. This year, it's been kind of the top of it. I mean, you could say the Colts and the Pats or the Broncos or the Eagles, but every single one of those teams, maybe sans the Pats, have their own question mark. The Eagles have beaten some really good teams. They're the reigning Super Bowl champs, but that offense looks inept at times. The Broncos are 9-2, 10-2, whatever they are. Bo Nix doesn't look good. The Pats look great. They haven't really beaten anybody. They played the weakest schedule in the league. Okay, what about the Rams? Well, they've lost some games. Seahawks, are we doing the Sam Darnold thing? Sam Darnold's great. Are we doing that? He's elite enough. He's good enough to lead the number 1 team in the league. We doing that one? Because I'm not sold on that. So yeah, I'm buying that we still don't know who the best team in the NFL is, and I will reckon to guess that we will never figure out who it is this year until the Super Bowl. Stone?
Yeah, totally agree. I think in years past, it's always been like, it's Kansas City, or it's Tom Brady and the Patriots, or it's Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Not the case this year. I think it's New England, but if you sat there and said, all right, Super Bowl, Pats, Rams, who's winning? I can't sit there and say Patriots with a lot of confidence, right? I think a lot of people would say the Rams are the best team. I had them going to the NFC Championship. They look like if you had to pick one Super Bowl favorite at this point, I think I would say the Rams. The Eagles just keep winning, but as you mentioned, look inept offensively. Some people would throw the Broncos up there, but again, inept offensively. So there's several teams that I think you could make the argument for at this point, and I think those 4 probably headline that list here. But, yeah, definitely not a clear-cut number 1.
If you can pick one team, one Cincinnati team to win this weekend, there's a bunch of tough games. It's a bunch of big games. You've got your University of Cincinnati Bearcats taking on the number 6 team in the country, the Louisville Cardinals. Yeah. We've got your Cincinnati Bengals taking on the New England Patriots on Sunday. We've got your Cincinnati Bearcats on College Game Day against BYU.
Big noon, not college
Big noon.
game.
My
Right,
bad.
yeah.
Not College Game
Yeah.
Day. Big noon.
Right.
Apologies.
That's a big difference.
That is.
Don't
That
think
is.
like
I get it. I get it. I apologize. Sorry. The pregame college football show.
Yeah.
Or your FCC Fighting Lions against Lionel Messi and Inter Miami to advance in the postseason. You pick one to win. Who you picking to win?
Come on. The Bengals. What are
Oh,
we
I
talking
thought for
about
sure
here?
you're going to say FCC.
Yeah.
Stone Shields is going to have Paul Dehner on the Stone Shields show. It's coming up in just a moment. Thank you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Double pistols. Put those things away. See you guys.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. My name is Stone Shields. Lots to discuss on today's Tuesday edition of the show. Obviously, Jamar Chase, he has been suspended. He will likely not play against the New England Patriots. He is appealing that suspension. Don't exactly see that being overturned here at this point. I think the video evidence seems to be pretty clear that he did, in fact, spit on Jalen Ramsey, but he is going to appeal it. We'll see if there is a change in that ruling, but I think overall, right decision, right? The NFL, they set a precedent, obviously, with the Jalen Carter situation. Can't have this happening in the league. Needs to be suspended, unfortunately, for the Bengals, right? They certainly could use him against a Patriots team, but it's a hefty fine. He gets suspended, and, hopefully it doesn't happen again for Jamar, and hopefully he's back the week after the New England game and can get back to playing good football, and hopefully Joe Burrow will be joining him out there on the football field. So we'll talk about that a little bit on today's show. Paul Dehner Jr. is going to join us from The Athletic, does a fantastic job covering the Cincinnati Bengals. Looking forward to talking to Paul in about 20 minutes. We'll cover all things. We'll cover the Jamar incident. We'll cover what Zach Taylor had to say about the Jamar incident. We'll talk offensive line. We'll talk defense. We'll talk Duke Tobin. We'll talk Zach Taylor there as well. So looking forward to that conversation with Paul at about 11:30. So make sure you stick around for that. Also, there was a Monday Night Football game last night. It stunk, to be completely honest. The Dallas Cowboys obviously playing with heavy hearts in that game as Marshawn Nealon recently passed away, their teammate, of course, and they go out there and they played really inspired football in that game, albeit against a very bad Las Vegas Raiders team. But, that was good to see. I think if you're an unbiased person if you're not a Raider fan or not a Cowboy fan. And I know there's a lot of Cowboy haters out there, and that's fine. But in this game, playing with heavy hearts like that, probably pulling for the Dallas Cowboys, I was happy to see them come out on top with a victory. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about that game. Raiders, obviously a mess. Do you fire Pete Carroll? Do you bring him back next year? Obviously, he is very, very old. Still, has a lot of energy and very exuberant and runs around out there. But, the Raiders are just a complete mess. Had an opportunity, as I always say, to go get Sam Darnold, and they said, nah, we'll take Geno Smith. How's that working out for you? Not well at all. Ashton Genty, by the way, when you take a running back that early, always very dangerous. Sometimes it works out, i.e. Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit. Sometimes it doesn't, especially when you're behind a bad offensive line. So I'm not going to write Genty off yet at this point, but what do you have? 7 yards on the ground, 6 yards on the ground, something absolutely ridiculous. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the Monday Night Football game there as well. And also, we've introduced this segment into the program. We'll just roll through some sports headlines to close out today's show. Great slate of college basketball tonight. Michigan State and Kentucky. Kentucky obviously lost to Louisville, who Cincinnati has at Heritage Bank on Friday. Kentucky's still a national title contender, all right? Louisville's a really good team, and I expect that game against Sparty to be really good tonight. Duke, Kansas as well. I think Duke's certainly the better team there, but they're, it's early, and when you have Duke early with Shire and you get the Boozer twins, always going to be a lot of freshmen. You saw it last year with Flagg and Knippel. It just takes a little bit of time for them to gel and really turn into a good team. I think this Duke team will eventually turn into a good team. Going to be a little bit of some growing pains here, but I still expect them to come out victorious here tonight. And then Xavier back in action at the Cintas Center against Old Dominion. I think they're only 10-point favorites against Old Dominion, which is crazy. But, they need to win that game. I understand the roster isn't very good. I understand, Sean Miller kind of screwed him over there with, his departure and not really setting up the program with anything. And then they're like, well, we don't want to go all in with NIL this year because it's kind of late and there's not a great crop of players here at this point. But they got to beat Old Dominion. Let's just call a spade here. That obviously needs to happen. So we'll roll through our sports headlines at the end. College football playoff rankings come out tonight. We'll have our top 10 on the show tomorrow. I think I'm ready to, bump down Texas A&M a little bit, maybe put Georgia over top of them. I give them a lot of credit for coming back and winning that game in the second half. Showed a lot of fight, showed a lot of grit. But let's not act like that first half didn't happen, because obviously it did, and obviously it was not very good. Virginia Tech, they are set to hire James Franklin. He gets fired by Penn State, immediately gets a Power 4 job. He's in the ACC. And, I think it's a solid move for Virginia Tech. I've never been a James Franklin guy. I don't anticipate I ever will be. But it's not like he's going to Florida or LSU. Right, or even Arkansas. I think Virginia Tech, that's a fine job for James Franklin. So we'll talk about that. Lane Kiffin, lots of crazy rumors circulating him here at this point. It would be very interesting to see what he does. Obviously, he has a big decision to make, and apparently the school's putting a little pressure on him to make a decision sooner rather than later. We'll talk about that. Also, Jake Paul is actually going to fight a real boxer. It's Anthony Joshua, who is an Olympic gold medalist and two-time heavyweight champion in the world. So that is bonkers. And if we have some time, we'll spend some time talking about that. Paul Dehner Jr., about 15 minutes. Looking forward to that conversation. We'll touch on Jamar Chase, his suspension a little bit prior to that segment with Paul as well. But I do want to start with our power rankings. We do it every Tuesday morning here at the show. If you're on the internet, you're on social media, there were some issues here this morning. Twitter was not working, Canva wasn't working, our graphics package wasn't working, and right before we kind of came on, it all started working again. So we don't have our graphics here for our power ranking segment like we usually do. By the way, we are live on Twitter right now, so shout out to Nick Kirby for making that happen. But with no graphics here for the power rankings, just going to be me walking through this. Not a ton of changes at the top here at this point. Obviously, the teams that I had at the top won this past week, so not much movement there at the top, but we do have some movement there at the bottom. And this 10 spot is one I spent some time thinking about. There's 3 teams under consideration for this spot: the Baltimore Ravens, the Detroit Lions, and the Green Bay Packers. And I ended up going with the Green Bay Packers here at number 10. I've got the Lions completely falling out of the top 10. They had some serious offensive issues in that game Sunday night against Philadelphia. I understand that Philadelphia Eagle defense is really, really good after that Jalen Phillips trade. I mean, my goodness, that just appears to be another incredible piece for, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni and those guys in Philadelphia. But I got some serious concerns with the Lions offensively. It's one thing when Dan Campbell says, yeah, I'm going to take over play calling and we're going to play the Washington Commanders. Totally different when you have to go out there on the road in Philadelphia and play that Eagle defense, and it did not look good. Again, credit to the Eagles. They blanketed guys all afternoon or all evening long, made things really difficult. We're able to get home with only, bringing 3-4 guys. Didn't even really have to blitz to affect the quarterback. Obviously, Goff has mobility issues, basically a statue, kind of a dinosaur, really, this day and age of professional football. I understand all those things. Philadelphia did a tremendous job. I've got concerns about the Lions, and that defense, not very good. They played well in the game against Philadelphia. I got some questions there on the back end. They got, Kirby Joseph, he's banged up. The kid Arnold from Alabama, he's also a little bit banged up there as well. So I don't trust them from a secondary perspective, and it was enough to knock them completely out of this list. And then the Ravens I considered, but as we talked about on Off the Bench, they got offensive line issues, particularly there in the interior. And when you're a quarterback and your guard play is not good, it is very, very difficult. Even if you have the mobility of a guy like Lamar Jackson, when you have big guys constantly directly in your face, it can prohibit your abilities to be accurate with the football down the football field. Lamar Jackson had some of those issues against Cleveland, turned the ball over with 2 interceptions in that game. Cleveland's a good defense. Baltimore, I still think, can hang in there with the top of this league, but I've got questions with them. I'm not ready to put them in the top 10. So I go with the Packers. Don't feel great about Green Bay. They beat the Giants. Love exits the game early. He comes back. He makes some big throws. The receivers continue to be issues for Green Bay. They don't have that one. They went out and drafted a bunch of those guys. They haven't really had somebody kind of separate themselves from the pack. Here at this point, it's very much receiver by committee in Green Bay, and that certainly has caused them a lot of issues here at this point for the Packers. Still have a fine record. I still think they're a playoff team. And look, I picked this team to go to the Super Bowl. They clearly don't look like they're on that level. I have confidence that LaFleur and Love will get things figured out offensively. The defense in Halfley, tremendous job. They do enough to get in my top 10, but I certainly don't feel great about it. At number 9, Tampa Bay. Last week I had the Buccaneers at 7. This week they lose, of course, to the Buffalo Bills, 44-32. I dropped them down a couple of slots. Baker Mayfield's awesome. Right, there's really no other way to put it. He is absolutely awesome. That was a great battle between him and Josh Allen. You look at the score and you go, it's a 2-possession game, not necessarily great. No, that thing was back and forth, and Buffalo just there at the end was able to kind of get that additional score and pull away. Obviously, Allen was better than Baker in the game, but Baker was tremendous. They've got guys banged up along their offense. Obviously, you have questions with their defense when they give up 44 points, but let's not act like some bum was out there playing quarterback for Buffalo. It happens to be a guy named Josh Allen, and last time I checked, he's pretty good. So I don't think their defense is going to be as bad going forward. And look, they're still going to win that division. They're still going to be a playoff team. I still think they probably get a playoff win. No Mike Evans obviously is huge, not having him. But I really expect them to continue to play good football and hang in there. The Panthers are kind of making some crazy run at this division, but let's be real here. They're not on the same level as Tampa Bay. I still view Tampa as a top 10 team. They went on the road to Buffalo, played a heck of a game. Defense unable to get off the field. Again, they were playing Josh Allen. I don't think much less of Tampa Bay after that game. All right, the San Francisco 49ers check in at number 8. I did not have them ranked in my top 10 last week. They beat the Cardinals 41-22. Brock Purdy, he comes back. He plays great. 3 touchdowns in the game for Purdy, and there was a lot of questions kind of going in, right? Because your quarterback that was in place, Mac Jones, he was playing great football. To me, he looks like a guy that should be a starter in this league and have an opportunity to do so next year. And we said if Purdy comes in here against Arizona, doesn't play well, and heaven forbid they lose that game, there's going to be a lot of noise out on the West Coast. Didn't happen. He comes in. He plays well. And there's a rapport, a clear rapport there between him and George Kittle. Lots of these younger quarterbacks have that, right, where it's like, this tight end is a guy that they trust, and there's great chemistry. And Kittle's been fine with Mac since he came back from injury, but pairing him back up with Brock Purdy, there's clearly something special there. Purdy kind of calms everybody down. Yep, he's still the guy in San Francisco. You got a really good backup. Hopefully, for the sake of the Niners, you don't have to call upon him again this year. But, the Niners are really banged up. They got injuries all over their defense. But I said it at the very beginning of the year, and I'm going to continue to say it. I would give Kyle Shanahan the Coach of the Year award at this point. Obviously, they have to continue to win games, but the job he's done has been masterful in the Bay Area this year. Niners check in at 8. 7, I got the Bills. Last week I had them at 10. They, of course, beat the Bucs 44-32. Josh Allen looked like Josh Allen. He was unbelievable, and that was kind of a sign to the rest of the NFL. When 17's on his game, they're tough. Right, and Reed was kind of talking about this on Off the Bench. There's not really a team that has kind of separated themselves from the pack, and we sit there and say, yes, you're the best team in the National Football League. In years past, typically there is, right? Oh, it's the Chiefs this year, or it's the Bills this year, or it's the Ravens, or it's the Eagles, or it's the Patriots with Tom Brady, right? You don't really have that this year, and I think when that is the case, When these star quarterbacks like a Mahomes or an Allen go out there and ball out, they might be that team. So I've got issues and questions, I should say, with Buffalo defensively. They ran the ball a little bit better, but when Josh Allen's playing like that, they could go out there and flat out win the Super Bowl. They got number 7 on my power rankings. At 6, I've got the Seattle Seahawks. Last week, they were at the number 4 spot. They lost to the Rams 21-19 in L.A. And we talk about this all the time, where it's like, you have a loss or you have a close win. How are you going to view that team? Are you going to view them higher than you did before the game or lesser than you did going into the game? And honestly, I view Seattle higher, despite the fact that they lost. Sam Darnold went out there and threw 4 picks, right, against a team that a lot of people would argue is the best team in the NFL, in the Rams. And they were in that game. They had an opportunity to win that football game. And they had a game-winning kick that they missed, right? So Darnold, he kind of reverted back to some New York Jets Sam Darnold moments there with his performance in the game. He's not going to play that bad. For whatever reason, the Rams have his number. If you remember the playoff game last year, it was the Rams. He struggled, obviously. Darnold's been tremendous this year, but that's the thing about Sam Darnold. Occasionally you will get a stinker, and that obviously was a complete and utter stinker from Sam Darnold on Sunday. 4 interceptions, and it wasn't like, this one was tipped or this one, his receiver was in the wrong spot. They were all bad interceptions for Sam Darnold in that football game. And, the fact that the defense was able to hang in there like that Seattle defense, Mike McDonald, they've done a tremendous job. I still think they're going to compete for that division title. I still think they're going to be a threat in the playoffs. Sam obviously has to play much better than that, but I still got him at number 6. All right, I guess I got to do it. I guess I got to put the Denver Broncos in here at number 5. I've had them in the top 10. I had them at 9 last week. They beat the Chiefs 22-19. Their offense isn't very good, but Bo Nix, he played solid in the fourth quarter, and I guess he played solid throughout the entirety of the game there as well. Sean Payton's awesome. I love Sean Payton. That defense is incredible. They're probably the best defense, right? You talk about teams like the Eagles and teams like the Seahawks. I think even the Texans there to some degree, but Broncos probably at the best defense. They're good at all 3 levels. And look, when you hold Mahomes to 19 points, that says a lot. And it's not just Mahomes and a bunch of bums. We've talked about the Chiefs. They have guys out there offensively this year. And to hold them to less than 20 says a lot. And I guess we got to start, buying into the Broncos a little bit here. If you want to win a world championship, you got to be able to score points, and you got to have a competent quarterback. And I've got questions on whether or not that's the case, but all they do is win. So I've got them checking in here at number 5. At 4, I've got the Indianapolis Colts. Last week, I had them at 6. They are a beneficiary of some other teams at the top losing. So they obviously did not play, but they get bumped up a couple of spots. They were idle this past week. I'm not fully in on Daniel Jones. He's done a lot of good things, but that game, the international game, he wasn't great. He was good enough for them to win. Jonathan Taylor very much should be in the MVP conversation. Lou Anarumo's done a great job with that defense. And, I think they got their sights on potentially trying to secure home field through the playoffs. I think the 1 seed's a real possibility for Indianapolis. I don't think they're as good as the other team that we're going to talk about here in a second, but got the Colts at 4. Eagles got them at 3. Top 3 doesn't change from last week. Last week I had them at 3. They beat the Lions 16-9. That defense is incredible. The Jalen Phillips trade from Howie, incredible. Quinyon Mitchell is one of the best young corners in the league. Those linebackers are great. Nakobe Dean, Jahad Campbell, who of course the Bengals could have, does a tremendous job at that linebacker spot. Their defensive line, Jalen Carter, is incredible. And Jordan Davis is great as well. He had several, knockdowns at the line of scrimmage there in that football game. So that defense is incredible. You got questions on offense. It's crazy to see the Eagles struggle to run the football because they've got dudes there on that offensive line. Juergens has proven he's a great center. Obviously, he had missed a couple of games, and then he left the game, and they had to put the backup, Toph, in. Again, that didn't go over very well. I think Dickerson there at that guard spot's really good, along with Steen. Mailata obviously has been solid, but you're going to lose Lane Johnson for it looks like a few weeks. Then you got to go with Fred Johnson, who we all know isn't necessarily the most reliable guy in the world. Saquon hasn't exactly looked like himself. A couple of tush pushes in the game that they weren't able to execute on, which is crazy. We don't often see that. So you got questions there for them, but they were trying to get the ball to A.J. Brown. Clearly, for whatever reason, when these receivers go out there and they make headlines and they make noise, they almost always get an opportunity to get a lot of catches and get a lot of balls thrown their way in the subsequent game. And they did that, and he didn't exactly capitalize to the degree that I think a lot of people had hoped. But they got good receivers. I like Jalen Hurts. right? Is he Josh Allen? Is he Joe Burrow? No, but he's really good. His 2 best games of his career have come in the Super Bowl. I think they're protecting him a little bit, and we heard, of course, Collinsworth allude to this on the broadcast, where it's like, when the Eagles are at their best, he's got to be running the football a little bit. And they've kind of fully protected him, which maybe they're just trying to save him for the home stretch and the playoffs, which might be a good decision. But, you've got questions there offensively. There's still the growing pains of a new OC, but I think, growing pains in Philadelphia are much easier to deal with when you're winning football games, and they're still finding ways to win. So I got them at 3. Rams got him at 2. Last week I had him at 2. They beat the Seahawks 21-19. My real only concern with the Rams is sometimes things get a little stagnant for them in the middle of the game offensively. When you got McVay, when you have these elite play callers, that opening script is going to be tremendous, right? When you have an opportunity to figure out exactly, what plays you want dialed up, and you go in there and you call them and you go down the field and you score. Oftentimes you see the Rams do that, and they've done a tremendous job of that. Their defense is really good. They got a lot of youth. They got a lot of good players. They got a lot of experience, too, after they've played for a couple of years together now. That defense is absolutely real, and Shula has done a tremendous job there defensively. It's just a little bit of stagnation there in the middle of games is my only concern with the Rams. But Matthew Stafford, you could say he's the MVP of the league here at this point. I think I would probably put him there at that point, and he's seen it all, he's done it all, and I think he's in a position to go on another run here if everybody can stay healthy. Puka obviously is incredible. Devontae Adams has kind of been unlocked and has kind of turned into that guy that they hoped he would when they made that signing. So I think the Rams are certainly a force to be reckoned with here at this point. And at the number 1 spot, I have the New England Patriots. I've been on this for a while. I've had them at 1 for several weeks now. They played on Thursday Night Football. They beat the Jets. 24-17, I think, was the final of that game, or maybe it was a little bit more than that. But the Jets obviously stink. They're not good. But it's more about the Patriots. I'm a big believer in them. Vrabel being the head coach, he's going to be there for a long time. I think McDaniels, the OC, he's going to be there for a long time too, right? Because he's kind of tried the head coaching thing in the past. Hasn't worked out well at all. And I think if I'm a team that has a head coaching opening here this year or in years to come, regardless of the success he has with Drake May and Mike Vrabel in New England, I don't know if I want to entertain the idea of bringing him in as being the head coach, because he's tried a couple of times and he's failed. So I think that marriage, that relationship between Drake May, Mike Vrabel, and Josh McDaniels is going to be in place for a long time. I think there's going to be a lot more winning in this organization's future, and I think it's going to continue this year. I understand they have a weak schedule, right? That's what happens when you play bad the previous year. You get a favorable schedule the following year, but they have beat the Buffalo Bills, have an opportunity to do that again here coming up, and we'll see. But I think these Patriots are real. I think the number 1 seed is a real possibility for them in New England, and there really isn't that one team that has kind of come out at top of the AFC. When you talk about the AFC right now, you're talking about the Patriots, the Colts, and the Broncos, and they all have young quarterbacks. I know Daniel Jones isn't really young, but unproven quarterbacks. They seem to be on the best teams. But what's to say that Josh Allen isn't going to come in and perhaps knock them off in the postseason, right? Or if the Chiefs can still get, if Mahomes can do it, or Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, right? So we have a lot of unproven quarterbacks on some of these really top teams in the AFC. But I'm buying stock on the New England Patriots. I don't think this is a fluke whatsoever. I think it is real, and I think Drake May has done a tremendous job. He deserves MVP love, and I've got them once again at number 1 in my power rankings here this week. All right, now it's time to talk some Cincinnati Bengals here on the show. Our guest is standing by. His name is Paul Dehner Jr., and he does a tremendous job of covering the Cincinnati Bengals for The Athletic. He's done it for a long time. Paul, how's it going? Thanks for making some time, man.
What's going on? How we doing?
Doing good, doing good. Let's jump right into it here. Obviously, the news of the week is, of course, Jamar Chase and his suspension, and he's going to be missing for the Cincinnati Bengals here in this game against the New England Patriots. I guess I just want to take you back in time a little bit to when this video came out and what your instant reaction was to the video, because, Jamar Chase is a player that, maybe he's ran a little bit hot in the past. He's been a little bit feisty, or maybe gets in some scuffles here and there, but something like this was completely, out of character. He's always shown that he's a good teammate, a good player, done good things off the field there as well. So this was kind of out of the norm, certainly, for Jamar Chase. What was your reaction when you saw the video?
Yeah, I mean, that he did it.
Right.
That especially we had just kind of come out of the locker room where Jamar denied doing it. And so you're thinking, okay, maybe it's just Jalen Ramsey being kind of a punk, because Jalen Ramsey can be kind of a punk.
Sure.
And so maybe that was part of it. And so then you see, okay, well, he just kind of completely lied to us about that. But I thought, yeah, exactly what you said is that this is not who Jamar has kind of been. I mean, we've sort of talked about him, and it's kind of been the story of the year with Jamar Chase is that he has been a guy that has really grown in terms of his maturity, and he's kind of become more of a leader and doing the right things. Whereas before, like, man, after a game, you just waited. Is Jamar going to pop off?
Right.
What's he going to do out there? And he's had plenty of things that have happened on the football field over early portions of his career that have been a little unhinged. He runs hot as an emotional player, like you said. And so it felt like, though, that those days were kind of behind him. And so for this to kind of be this thing, my reaction was, oh, that's really unfortunate because it's gonna mar so much of what he has done right over the course of time as he's kind of grown from this really, this very young, immature in a lot of ways kid when he showed up in Cincinnati to somebody who they put up front as like, this is the example. This is who we want everybody to be here. And so my thought was, man, this is no one's going to really care that he's made those strides anymore. And that's kind of unfortunate.
And the second part to that is kind of how Zach would handle it. And obviously Zach talked to you guys yesterday, and this is a guy in Zach Taylor that has always gone to bat for Jamar Chase, and rightfully so. I think probably as a head coach, you should always do that with your best players. I think he understands to some degree where his bread's buttered, right? The last thing he wants to do is kind of get on Jamar Chase's bad side. But I wasn't surprised at all with how Zach handled it. Again, it was a mistake. Can't do it, can't happen. He's going to pay the price, but I don't think people should crucify him for this decision. What was kind of your guys' response there during that press conference as far as how Zach handled the situation?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he handled it really well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tough spot for a head coach to be in.
Yeah.
But I guess he's used to having to be put in tough spots and kind of speak for other people. Yeah. But I thought, the point was right. It was, he did this thing. He's going to have to live with that. It was a mistake. Like, we all make mistakes. I make mistakes. But I'm going to stand here and vouch for a guy who, over the course of time, has consistently done things the right way to the point that we put him up there as truly the example of what we want everyone to follow here on this team. And I think just being honest about that and honestly, like, not being afraid to say, I'm upset by the fact that this thing keeps going on. You know what I mean? Was even better to be like, it needs to be clear how wrong he feels like any vilification of Jamar would be, other than, this is just a bad decision that this guy made in the heat of the battle. I certainly connect with it from a parent's perspective, and not from a when your kid does something wrong, but from when you do something wrong, even as a parent. And it's not necessarily about you're doing everything you can to try to be a good parent, to try to do things the right way, and then things get crazy and your kids drive you nuts, and in a moment you say something or that you shouldn't have said or whatever. But it's about then going back and then providing the example of look, this was a mistake. We all make them. You're going to make them. I make them. And let's recognize it and say we messed up and move forward, and more let the entirety of what you try to do as a parent, or in this case as a player, be what more speaks for you, rather than the one time when your emotions or whatever got the best of you. So I relate to Jamar. It's going to be really interesting to see what he says when he does talk. I have no problem with him not talking yesterday because first of all, we didn't even know if he was getting suspended. Right. And second of all, if he was appealing, you're not going to want to wait to talk about it until it is all cleared up. So I didn't really have that was probably made too much of a deal of him not saying anything yesterday. But I am curious to hear what he has to say next time he comes out, and especially in relation to what Zach said.
Let's talk about the offensive line here. I'm putting off the defense for as long as I can, but certainly the offense.
Please.
The offensive
what's left to say?
Right.
And what's left to say about the defense at this point? Like that's
much.
what it is.
Right. But the offensive line obviously was a big topic of discussion coming into the year and certainly in training camp there as well. Early on, Burrow goes down. People are talking about it. And the defense has kind of taken away a lot of that conversation, right? Because the defense has been so bad. And I thought the offensive line, when Joe Flacco took over, certainly was making some strides, some steps in the right direction. And I think they started the game against Pittsburgh playing really well. He went down the field. He scored a touchdown. And I don't know if I necessarily picked up on how bad they actually were playing until I actually heard you and Charlie talking about this, where there was a couple plays down the field where Noah Fant was open for some touchdowns that appeared to be schemed up really well, and the offensive line just couldn't quite hang in there for an extra second to allow Joe Flacco to get the ball down the football field. I guess here in year one with Scott Peters, how would you evaluate the offensive line play here to this point, and what's the likelihood that we see these same 5 guys out there in 2026? Because obviously you are playing 2 rookies, and I think they're not great, but they've gotten better a little bit as the year has gone on.
Yeah, I think that they've done enough. And when you consider that you have 2 rookies at guard, I think they've actually acquitted themselves pretty well once they got through the bumps and kind of got to Joe Flacco, helping them out more. I mean, Flacco and the way they've run offense, one, the run game has improved. And the offensive line deserves a ton of credit for that. I mean, they have been a huge reason why they've finally been able to find some holes for Chase Brown. And then Flacco having amongst the quickest times to throw in the league has helped, and going under center a little bit more has helped. But there's still been plenty of times where they still have to hold up. They haven't been taking as many of those quick losses. What Pittsburgh did in this game is the scheme that they put in the secondary really went a long way to making Flacco hold the ball that extra tick. Yeah. And that made a difference where you saw the pressure just get there, just in time, where they couldn't quite hold up long enough. As a whole, I think the offensive line is in a pretty good spot, as good of a spot as it's been in recent years. I can tell you, I would say with certainty that 4 of those guys will be out there next year. I don't know about Jalen Rivers at this point. Mm-hmm. I think he's been serviceable, and he deserves credit to be part of this group that has come together. But there probably could be another answer that happens there at right guard for sure. But there's certainly more stability. It feels like maybe they got one right in Dylan Fairchild for the first time in like 15 years in terms of the mid-round offensive lineman that they've just never been able to hit. That's been such a blind spot for them organizationally, and that's a big deal. So we'll see if that continues. But yeah, I think they're okay. When I'm looking at the list of problems on this current team, the offensive line is further down than you probably thought it would be when the year started.
No doubt. All right, defense. Cam Taylor-Britt, surgery, probably, I think, going to be out for the year. Seemingly every time, and look, I like Josh Newton when they picked him. He's a 5th-round guy. I don't think you should necessarily expect a lot for him, but seemingly every time he checks into the game, something bad happens. So I don't know if I personally would like to see him out there a ton against New England, but obviously you don't have a ton of options. Do you think somebody like a Jalen Davis or, Braylon Lux, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, he's still on the practice squad, and I actually thought I liked some of the stuff I saw from him in the preseason, some of the speed and awareness. He was just there and then couldn't always make the play. Do you anticipate maybe either one of those 2 guys getting an opportunity?
I do love that we've reached the Jalen Davis and Braylon Lux portion of the program here. Like that's when you know that it's gone a long way in the wrong direction. Yeah, I think somebody other than Josh Newton's a possibility. Josh has been quietly a big problem every time he's gotten in there. And we heard Al Golden talk yesterday about effort. I mean, I can't get past, we talked about it a bunch on Rewatch yesterday, the third and 17 where Darnell Washington carries Geno Stone about the last 5 yards. And it's obviously Geno Stone, that's a separate topic on his tackling, but you watch Josh Newton on these plays, and this is not the first time this has happened this year. It's just like almost walking to the ball, and Darnell Washington extends and just barely gets it by a yard to get the first down. And Newton just kind of standing there at the first down mark and just watches it all happen in front of him. The same thing happened in the Colston Loveland play. That was the winner where Newton is just hanging out around the outside of the action, almost afraid to get in, not knowing where he's supposed to get in there. I've had enough. Like, to me, the thing is, the talent is not there on this defense. They're not good enough. They've never been good enough. They haven't had enough talent all year. That's clear. The one thing that they need to do at this point, through my view, just play guys that are going to try hard.
Yeah.
Play guys that are going to want to tackle, that are going to want to be a part of it. They're going to be out here making mistakes, obviously. Just show that it matters to you. And there's just too many guys out there that it feels like it doesn't matter. So where do they go next to Cam Taylor Britt? Yeah, I mean, whether it's Jalen Davis, whether it's Marco Wilson, whether it's Braylon Lux, like I just want somebody that can go out there and prove that they're going to get in the mix and want to be a part of it, want to make a tackle, want to be part of a solution, and not just out there on the field. And where that goes next, who knows? I don't really know how much it matters.
I got to ask you about Trey Hendrickson. A lot of people in the fan base are talking about him and his injury. Look, I've always said I think Trey Hendrickson's kind of a selfish player, but when he's out there on the football field, it results in really good things for Cincinnati, and I think clearly he's the best free agent signing this organization has ever had. When it comes to his injury, obviously you probably don't know for sure here, but do you think is he protecting himself a little bit here and just kind of like, well, we're not doing well and I don't have a contract for next year? Or is this a situation where he's seriously hurt and can't go out there and play? Because, Trey Hendrickson, I just kind of banged on him there for a second, but when he's out there, he's as tough as they come and he's going to go to war for his team when he's in between those lines. But is there anything to that, or is that just a frustrated fan base?
I think there's something to it, but there's no way to know.
Right.
I mean, only Trey really knows what he's doing and how he really feels and if he could play through it.
Yeah.
I also, and this is kind of the same lens that we discussed this with T. Higgins in the middle of last year. It's like the organization also puts itself in this spot when you handle things this way, when you have a frustrated player and you have them in this sort of lame duck last year and entering free agency and don't give them the extension. Well, they're going to be less likely to want to go out there and sell out for you because they're looking out for themselves, and free agency's right around the corner. So does Trey Hendrickson want to make sure that the last things he puts on tape before his next free agency is him at 100% health and not some smaller 75% version of himself that's going to make teams question whether age is setting in on him? Mm-hmm. I get that perspective. I understand that. But it's also fair to ask the same question. And I did ask him this before the bye. Like, people are going to question whether you really can be out there. And he said, I probably came back too early last time. It was probably harder. I just want to make sure I'm 100%. The thing is with these situations, and that's why the player has the leverage to make these calls, is nobody really knows but them. And so I think Trey can answer that, and he's really the only one that can truthfully do it. But it's fair to speculate because of the nature of the situation, and he would probably say that he understands why people do. But I don't know if there's any way to know for sure. Then, he's probably in some pain, and maybe there's certain situations that he would play through it, but this isn't one.
Any chance they tag him again? I feel like they're kind of just ready to be done. And
I think it's over.
Yeah,
I think it's over.
Okay.
I mean, I don't. There's a chance.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a chance. This organization does things that surprise you all the time, right?
Yep.
I think there's probably a chance that they do. Maybe they try to execute a tag and trade situation. It's certainly within their rights to try to do that. It just feels like they're done with the Trey Hendrickson situation, and it's better for both sides to just move on. So I don't see him on the roster next year. Now, whatever they try to do in terms of getting compensation back, whether it's a comp pick or through a tag and trade, is probably more the conversation that they'll have internally.
Paul Dehner Jr. joining us live here from The Athletic for a couple of more minutes. Obviously, when you look at the defense, everybody that has a hand in the defense, every player that graces the playing field for the defense, coaches, ownership, all deserve blame. There's two players that come to mind for me, Barrett Carter probably and Geno Stone. Obviously, Carter is a rookie, but Geno Stone, it's just week after week, and he continues to get mass snaps and have opportunities and just simply does not deliver. I think a lot of people were wondering, like, what is Tycen Anderson not doing in practice to prove that he can go out there and play? Zach talked about this week, where it's like, well, it's not just tackling, it's, understanding the defense and all that comes with that. But Tycen Anderson's been here for a while now. Shouldn't he understand the defense? What's your take on that? Obviously, we all love him as a special teamer, but it says a lot if the coaching staff doesn't even trust him to put him in the game on defense.
Well, it says they made a mistake in the depth of the room then. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have somebody that you think understands the defense well enough to execute it at a similar level as Geno Stone can, then you didn't do a good enough job filling out that room. And we know that's the case. They didn't do a good enough job filling out that room. I think that's what it is. I think they feel like Geno Stone can keep them in the right calls, in the right places, and communicate enough to keep the explosives from happening. And they're just having to live with his tackling deficiencies at this point. I don't know. Can you give him another pay cut? Can they do that now?
Restructure it again?
I mean, it's just everything in the way that the safety room has been handled this year has been mind-blowing. I mean, it's just every decision is confusing, and you're just out here tolerating it at this point. But that's, this goes back to the effort thing that I talked about earlier. Like, I just want to – you can't go out there and not try to actually bring somebody down, and that's what is happening. There's no willingness to go out there to do it from him. To me, that would count more. It's like, what does it matter anymore? Like, it's all going wrong anyway, so try anybody else. Try something else. Their actions are speaking louder than any words can. I mean, they would make the move because it's obvious what's happening out there on the field. They would make that move if they felt like it was something that they could count on. They really believed in Tycen. Obviously, they don't. It's kind of funny because we saw Pittsburgh, from the first time these two teams play, basically remake their safety room. Yeah. I mean, they have all new pieces back there. It wasn't going well. Their pass defense was atrocious. There's blown assignments and guys weren't getting it done. So they went out and moved people around. They acquired people. And the Bengals have just stayed the course, and it's stayed bad. And I thought that was kind of an interesting dichotomy to watch, how those teams adjusted to things that were going wrong a month later.
You talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Mo. It kind of feels like for the first time this year, Duke Tobin really finds himself in the crosshairs. Obviously, he doesn't talk to you guys during the year, and usually Zach gets all the criticism, but now people are like, these players, they aren't very good. I guess my question to you is, do you have a feel for how much say Zach Taylor has in the drafting process? Because I think some people would say, well, that seems like a Zach Taylor pick or an Al Golden pick. Or is this a situation where Duke Tobin fully is calling the shots on draft night? What's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, I mean, he's calling the shots.
Yeah.
Now, he wants the shots to come from a place of, cohesion. He wants it to feel like everybody's on board with a pick. It's the core of what his philosophy has been in the small scouting staff that he obviously takes a lot of heat for. Is he just wants the guys that have the right voices to everybody to be on board, and the coaching staff should be a part of that. He doesn't want to feel like the personnel department is heaping people onto a coaching staff that doesn't believe in the guy. And then you're kind of, swimming uphill the whole time, or running uphill the whole time. Excuse me, mixing my metaphors there. But you have that as the kind of core tenet of what he's doing. So yeah, the coaches have a say. He wants them to get the guys they want. He is ultimately the one that makes the decision on who is the guy that everyone wants the most. These are his calls. He has the ability to trump people in the room. He does trump people in the room. And now there are times when other people's voices can come in and weigh in as well. But inevitably, yeah, I mean, I think Duke has to wear the picks. They all do. And Zach has a lot of say in what he's looking for. And so does Al.
Yeah.
But inevitably, Duke has to wear the picks. He has to be the one who's like, these are my players. These are the ones that I've brought in. This is the strategy I've had in the draft, in free agency, even more so, where Duke and the personnel department, these are their guys. These are their decisions. This is how they went out and tried to fulfill what the coaches are saying that they need. And so I think, this is everyone's recognizing the players aren't good enough. The team is not good enough. How is the defense not fixed yet? Mm-hmm. And it's clear now more than ever that so much of that directs back to Duke.
Burrow, you play him or you sit him?
If he can play,
yep,
and not compromise himself either in terms of re-injury, which I don't know how much that would be the case, or inability to truly move to protect himself back there as he normally does. If either of those things are like, well, it's not quite, you're going to have to play with some deficiencies here where he's not totally going to be able to move the way he wants to, I don't play him. Yep. There's no reason to.
Yep.
But if he goes out there and he's 90% of his movement self and he could do all the things he normally does for the most part, and he wants to play, let him play. Play your guy. He's your quarterback. He should play. And start building towards what's next and go try to win some games. Like I don't have a problem with that. The only problem I have, if there's a feeling that like, okay, you could be jeopardizing his ability to keep himself safe out there for any number of reasons. To me, that's it. This is a doctor decision.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor, I want to know what the doctors say. Tell me if there is any way that he is putting himself more at risk than he normally would be going on a football field. And that's the answer to your question, much more than it is a philosophical thing. I think if he can do that, he should play.
Totally agree. And final question for you, Paul. I've defended Zach Taylor for a long time. Sometimes it gets difficult to do it, but my way of thinking is you just paid T, you just paid Jamar, you got Joe. Keep the head coach rolling, and we'll try this thing again next year. A lot of people call me crazy for saying that. What's your take? Obviously, there's still a lot of games to be played. He can't lose out. They've got to win a couple of games here, and they obviously can't quit on the team. But is running it back with Zach Taylor the worst thing in the world, or is it a time to make a decision as far as going in a different direction at head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a long conversation about the state of everything. Because the bottom line is like he's going to get credit for this offense. We'll give him credit for the offense. Like they have kept it afloat with Joe Flacco. They've had maybe the best offense in football since he got here. And he deserves credit for that. The same way they gave him credit for what he did when Burrow got hurt and Jake Browning played back in 2023. What the offense has been, he's consistently put out top offenses. Okay, like you get credit for that. But at some point, you have to be responsible for this defense. And we can sit here and say it's the players, but you don't usually get to do the second defensive coordinator hire. Now, it was Lou Anarumo. Okay, new coach needs to come in. Is this now on Al Golden, or is Al Golden basically saying the same things Lou Anarumo did? These players are bad. I can't go make bad players play good.
Yeah.
That's not how any of this works. And so if that's the case, then maybe you just say, okay, let's live with the growing pains of this past year. Let's use every dime and draft capital piece that we have to rebuild this defense. We believe in this coaching staff. This will be his first losing record since 2020. How ugly does it get down the stretch will play a role in this. I mean, there is 7 games where this thing could feel absolutely irreconcilable differences.
Yeah.
It could very much go that way, especially when you consider the schedule. So I think it's, I call it 22% of precincts reporting like it's election night right now. I don't think we can really go there in terms of you're asking me to predict what they're going to do. I'm sure everybody listening and watching this is like, I know what they should do. 100% of precincts are in the fan base. I get that. But in terms of acknowledging what they will do, I don't know that we can go all the way there yet, but he's going to get credit for the offense.
Yep.
He's going to get credit for the fact that they have had winning records the last few years, and the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship game were not that long ago. I don't shoot the messenger. I'm telling you what's going to happen in these conversations. Mm-hmm. And you have the most patient owner maybe in the history of sports. So it's certainly not clear cut. I'm not going to sit here and say that we know for sure what that is yet. It very much reminds me of the end of the Marvin Lewis days, though, where every year it felt like, and it feels like it always goes 1 year longer than you think it should.
Yeah,
that's been the case here for a long time. Whether we're talking about with Marvin, whether we were talking about even all the way back to Dave Shula, and things like that. And now I think Duke Tobin's going to be part of that conversation too. So yeah, there's time. I don't know where it goes, but it's obvious that these conversations are going to be far more serious than they've ever been in his time here.
No doubt. I guess we'll all just have to wait and see. Paul Dehner Jr., appreciate you. Tell us all the great stuff you got going on at The Athletic, and also you got the Growler podcast there too as well. Where can we find that? And I think a new website, if I heard that correctly as well.
Yeah, growlerpodcast.com. You can find all of our stuff there. We have the rewatch reaction show that Charlie and I do going through the tape. PD and Jay, of course, Jay and I are still doing our thing together with Mo Egger. We just recorded an episode today. Who They Light with comedian Mark Shalafu is up on the site there. And then, of course, we have the post-game podcast every single week. So all that's up there on the feed. And I'm still at The Athletic doing all the writing stuff there. I have a column up on Jamar Chase if anybody wants to go read more about that. So make sure you check it out.
Paul, I appreciate you, man. That was awesome stuff, and I would love to do it again. Thanks for making some time. Probably kept you for a few extra minutes there. I apologize for that, but thank you so much for stopping by, and would love to do it again.
No problem. Have a good one.
All right, see you, Paul. Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic. Great stuff covering the Cincinnati Bengals. He's covered the team for quite some time here. Very generous with his time here on a Tuesday morning. And, there's a bunch of great beat writers that cover the Bengals and have for a long time, but Paul's always been that first column that I always tune into and read on The Athletic when I'm trying to figure something out about the team. So I appreciate his time. That interview will be up later on the channel. That will be out in podcast form there as well, so make sure you check that out. You don't want to miss it. We appreciate Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic stopping by and giving us some time here at the show. All right, couple of minutes left. Let's skip over Monday Night Football here at this point. Cowboys won, playing with heavy hearts, obviously. They just lost their teammate, Marshawn Nealand, obviously, not too long ago. And it was good to see the Cowboys come out on top in that game. Didn't have a dog in the fight. Not a Raider fan, obviously not a Cowboy fan, but it was good to see them come out with a victory. The Raiders are abysmal. They're terrible. They got a lot of changes that they need to make, and we'll see if they hold on to Pete Carroll as the guy going forward. But let's roll through some sports headlines to conclude today's show. Got a great night of college basketball. Michigan State plays Kentucky, and Duke plays Kansas there as well. And I talked about this at the top of the show. Kentucky is a team that I view as still very much a national title contender here at this point. They lost to Louisville earlier. Louisville, obviously, Cincinnati has to deal with them at Heritage Bank on Friday. That will be challenging, obviously. But Louisville's really, really good, too. So I don't think Kentucky necessarily is in a spot where they're out of this thing just because they lost to Louisville. That's ridiculous. I expect them to play well tonight. But Izzo, Sparty, they're going to play well as well. So 6:30 tip tonight. That should be a lot of fun as college basketball really gets into full swing. And then Kansas and Duke as well. Talked about this at the top. You get the Boozer twins, obviously. Freshman, Duke, John Shire, even with Coach K, you're always going to have to play with some freshmen, right, because you're going to get a lot of the top recruits. They do have some guys coming back on their team, and it'll be interesting to see how they kind of gel over the course of the next few weeks here. But I think Duke's certainly going to be a threat in this thing at the very end. I think they're going to be in a good spot, and I expect that to be a good game there as well. And Xavier plays Old Dominion tonight. And it's been a rough go for the Muskies. We've talked about it at length. They need to win this game, flat out. I don't care what kind of recruiting situation you find yourself in. I don't care how poorly Sean Miller set you up before he departed for Texas. You got to beat Old Dominion, right? I think they're 10.5-point favorites in this game. Got to establish some positive momentum or maybe even a little bit of hope in the fan base that this thing isn't going to be literally the worst season of all time. You have to win tonight. Hard to believe I'm saying that for a college team on November 18th, but must win tonight for the Muskies against Old Dominion, and we'll have some highlights up there on our Chatterbox Twitter pages if you want to follow that along tonight. College football playoff rankings also will be released tonight on ESPN. We'll see if there's any shakeup at the top. I don't anticipate they will. I think they'll have Ohio State 1, rightfully so. Indiana probably 2, A&M 3, Georgia 4 would probably be my guess here at this point. I would be tempted to put Georgia a step above Texas A&M in the rankings here at this point. Texas A&M, of course, was at home against South Carolina. We're down 30-3 at halftime, then came all the way back and won 31-30. So credit to the guts of the team and the grittiness to hang in there and play good football throughout the duration of that game, or that second half, I should say. But that's a very concerning first half, and that's not like you're playing Ohio State there in South Carolina. It's a fine team. They got some good players, but that kind of a half can't happen. So they deserve a lot of credit for coming back, but obviously that's borderline lucky to come back and win a game like that. So credit to them. They keep their undefeated season going, but I would be tempted to put Georgia above Texas A&M after that performance. And then Indiana, obviously, they handle Wisconsin. That defense is good. The Wisconsin offense, obviously, is horrible, but Mendoza now has kind of become that Heisman favorite. I think Simpson certainly takes a significant step back with his performance, even though I thought he was fine in the game this past weekend against Oklahoma. But I think it's probably a Sayin Mendoza award. Sayin, unfortunately, like they play Rutgers this week. Are you going to win the Heisman in a game against Rutgers? No. But if he balls out against Michigan, then balls out against Indiana, I think he'll have an opportunity to win it. Kind of feels like the winner of that Ohio State-Indiana, the quarterback of that team, if they play well, is probably going to win the Heisman Trophy here at this point. Virginia Tech set to hire James Franklin. Franklin, of course, fired this year by Penn State. He had been there for a decade plus, won a ton of games, but not able to get over the top. Couldn't win that big game, right? Only beat Ohio State once, and you could kind of see the frustration of the athletic department and certainly the fan base, because the second things went really wrong, he was gone, right? Because he always won the games he should have won and then lost the big games. Well, then, you go to the college football playoff, you make a run last year, and then you're winning games, and then you lose to Oregon at home, who's a good team, and then you follow that up by losing to UCLA and Northwestern, and then boom, it all blows up. So, I think it's a good landing spot for James Franklin, right? He still gets to coach in the Power Four, which when you're a coach, you get fired. That's certainly a blessing to still have that job. And look, I thought it would be a huge mistake if like a Florida or an LSU or even an Arkansas went after him. They didn't, and he goes to Virginia Tech. So he talked about on game day like winning a national title at his next stop. He's not going to win a national title at Virginia Tech, but do I think he can improve that program, get them back to where they were when Beamer was the coach? I think a possibility. I think he could be, one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the ACC. Obviously, a very weak conference there, but he lands on his feet. He gets the Virginia Tech job. I'm not going to say he got hosed right at Penn State, but, he had won a lot of games there, and he took a lot of crap, and, I guess I'm happy for him that he lands this job, and I think this is kind of a solid fit for him. Again, he doesn't belong at LSU or Florida, but at Virginia Tech, I think he's going to transcend that program and improve them a lot. I've never been the biggest James Franklin guy, but, happy for him. He lands on his feet. He gets this job. This report about Lane Kiffin is crazy. Apparently, Ole Miss is giving him an ultimatum that basically says, hey, you got to decide before the Egg Bowl what you're doing next year, which seems ridiculous, right? If I'm Ole Miss, I'm like, you focus on trying to win a national title, right? This isn't a team in Ole Miss that has a couple of losses, right? You got one loss, and this is your best shot to win a national title since Lane Kiffin has been here. The last thing I want to do is pressure him into some, what if you make him leave and he leaves, and then you burn away an opportunity to potentially win a national title. So if I'm Ole Miss, I get it from a recruiting perspective, and I get it. You don't just want to be kind of in a tough spot where it's like, the season ends, but the portal's always going, and the coaches that have already picked where they want to go if they're leaving. I understand it to some degree, but I'm letting him coach throughout this thing, and then I'm giving him a blank check at the end of it. Or I'm trying to do that to him now, right? Trying to get that extension done as soon as possible. But to try to pressure him into making a decision now seems ridiculous, right? Again, if you have a couple of losses, fine. You have an opportunity here to win the national title. If you're Ole Miss, apparently Baton Rouge or LSU in Florida have sent planes to his family, and his family has flown out to both spots and has checked him out. Kiffin apparently has not gone to either one, but crazy development here with Lane Kiffin, because his services are wanted in a lot of different spots, and obviously he has a decision to make. But I think this would be a huge mistake if Ole Miss tries to pressure him into a spot to make this call now. Again, if they didn't have a chance at winning a national title, fine, but that's not the case, as this is the best team he's had. Lastly, we don't talk a ton of boxing on the show. I'm not sure we're going to get into that habit. I am I watch a lot of UFC, would consider myself a fight fan. Boxing kind of has died recently, right? I remember growing up watching Floyd all the time. That was great. But since him, who has been that guy? Canelo, okay, right? But, this Tank Davis guy, right? Well, he's in trouble with the law. But Jake Paul apparently is going to fight Anthony Joshua. And, the knock, of course, if you're not familiar with boxing, is Jake Paul grows up as some Disney kid. He's some YouTuber, and then he commits his life to boxing. And he's actually a really, really good boxer. But the knock on him is he's fought, a bunch of old guys and a bunch of other YouTubers, and hasn't really fought a real true fighter that could go out there and beat him. And people have been banging on him about that. I remember he fought Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson is like 1,000,000 years old here at this point. It's like, well, what are you doing? That was one of the greatest cons of this century, to be completely honest with you. There was literally people out there that are like, oh, Tyson might have a chance. The guy's 1,000,000 years old. What are you talking about? And Jake Paul obviously went out there and dominated that fight. But he's fighting Anthony Joshua, and this is a real thing. This is actually happening. He was supposed to fight Tank Davis, who's probably the most, certainly in the United States, most popular boxer here at this point. He's got a bunch of legal stuff going on. He seems like he's just a horrible human being. So that fight gets canceled, but Paul still wanted to fight, and he's going to fight Anthony Joshua. Well, Anthony Joshua is the 2-time heavyweight champion of the world and is an Olympic gold medalist and is a huge guy. He's a heavyweight. A lot of people tune in to Jake Paul's fights because they want to see him potentially get knocked out. I mean, he's fighting Anthony Joshua. There's a chance that he gets absolutely obliterated in this fight. So, I mean, this is a guy in Anthony Joshua that beat the crud out of Francis Ngannou, who's a UFC guy. I understand that, but this is crazy. Credit to Jake Paul. He's got some serious guts. He's got to be crazy to do this. He's going to make a ton of money, obviously, doing this as well. It'll be on Netflix. It's in December, so, it's coming up here relatively quickly. I think it's 8 3-minute rounds. This is a fight that if you like boxing, you got to tune in, right? Even if you hate Jake Paul, it's like Anthony Joshua is fighting this guy, and Jake Paul has kind of been able to win and navigate all this, but hasn't really fought anybody. Did fight Fury and obviously lost. Tommy Fury, obviously, not Tyson Fury, but this is, I think apparently some people think that Joshua's going to do this and then hopefully get Tyson Fury to come out of retirement and fight him. But I thought it was fake when it came out. Like, this guy's fighting Anthony Joshua. Like, are we serious? So I'm going to tune into that, and obviously we'll see how that goes for Jake Paul. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate everybody hanging out as always. Great show. Paul Dehner Jr., outstanding stuff from him. Went a little bit longer there than I intended, but he was just rolling, and I was like, shoot, I'm still rolling too. So we appreciate Paul stopping by. Tremendous job covering the Bengals. Growler podcast. You find him up on The Athletic, covering the team. Does a tremendous job. That interview will be out later today. Jamar Chase, he's suspended. He's appealing it. Don't anticipate that getting overturned. Think the Bengals are probably going to be without him this week against the New England Patriots. But appreciate everybody hanging out on today's show. Again, clips on YouTube up later today. And, of course, the podcast will be up wherever you get your podcasts. That'll do it for this edition of the show. We appreciate everyone, as always. And until tomorrow, take care, everybody.